And dental office management is something that, we're all gonna end up getting involved with one day or the other, whether we like it or not. So Roxanne has been involved in dentistry for 40 years, and she's just providing us
5. I started in dentistry actually in high school, which I had a lot of experience going to the dentist as a child from a large family. My dad never had dental insurance, but all 5 of us, my mother made sure we went to the dentist on a regular basis, and I didn't like the dentist. I had a lot of work done as a child, and particularly hated dentistry. And then when I was 16, my sister at the time was a dental assistant, and back in the 70s, there wasn't a lot of schools to train dental assistants, front desk people. Most people were just trained on the job. So she said, you really have to schoolwork to come in and just, do stuff like and do a few things at the desk. And I thought, oh, I hate the dentist. Why would I want to work there? Anyway, she said, come on in and just meet them and see, if you think you'll like it. And we need somebody kind of 2 or 3 days a week after school. So I went in. And I didn't actually think I would like it, and I just fell in love with dentistry. My sister didn't stay in dentistry. She actually moved on to a different field that she had been trained for in college. And I was slowly trained in kind of sterilization. Then there was 2 dentists that were associating together, a practice owner and actually someone that Paul knew, a dentist that he went to school with was the associate. Larry Levin. So he had decided that he was going to go out on his own and open his own practice, and he opened a practice just down the hall from where we were. We were in a building in downtown Hamilton on the 11th floor, and it was all dentists on the 11th floor at that time. So he moved down the hall and said, I was finishing high school, and he said, would you like to come with me and be my main chairside assistant? And I thought, wow, I was planning on going to university or college, but I thought, go to college, maybe take a course, not sure if you're going to get employment after that, or here's a sort of guaranteed job in an office that I really liked working in. So I went with him and sort of took that leap of faith, and he trained me chairside. And he was way ahead of his time in terms of, I thought all dentists were like him, but I learned very quickly that not many were like him. He was a huge mentor in my life. And he shared kind of the business side of dentistry with me. He would bounce ideas off me. Should I renovate? Should I expand? Should we hire another person? When do you think I need another hygienist? And so we used to talk about the business side all the time, and I loved it as much as he did. So as I stayed with him and learned to be a chairside assistant, and he would show me the x-rays, what he wanted all of his team members to do, which he did so effectively, was he would train us to look at the x-rays, see what he sees, so that when we had an emerge patient come in, he would say, Rox, I want you to go into the op, set up the op with what you think I'm going to do after you take the x-ray, and then I'll let you know if that's what I would do. Because he wanted all of us not to be diagnosing or pretend that we were dentists, but he wanted us to see what he saw, problem solve, because it was less work for him. And so we would do that. We would talk to the patient. He always explained treatment, and this is pre-computers. We used a one-rate system for accounting. We had a dark room, which a lot of you would probably not have never experienced, developing x-rays in a dark room. And so the x-rays were always wet when we were looking at them. So dentistry was pretty basic, but he was certainly ahead of his time in terms of he loved technology, was doing really, really interesting surgeries. I loved assisting for surgical procedures like retrograde amalgams when a root canal failed, and he would explain the treatment. And he also wanted us to be able to explain the treatment to patients and discuss the financial aspect. And just as Sarah was saying, that when you really involve the patient and have them understand what it is that they need to get healthy, then the patients are very much invested. the patients are very much invested in, what you're trying to do for them. And generally, money is not, a big factor in those decisions. And there wasn't near as many as insurance plans as there are today. So people were paying for treatment. And he was also a great humanitarian. If somebody came in and they needed a root canal, he studied at the Pankey Institute in Coral Gables, Florida, and did several levels of Pankey. And the Pankey philosophy was that you don't extract teeth. Because someone says, oh, I can't afford a root canal, or I don't want a root canal, he refused to take that tooth out. So he would even say to the patient on many occasions, if I don't want to take that tooth out, there's all kinds of things that are going to happen once we remove that molar, and we would explain it. He would draw them pictures, and he would say, you know what, I'm going to do that root canal for you, and you pay me when you can. And so that was just the kind of person that he was. He was huge into continuing education, so he took us as a team every year to major conferences. So I'm like 18, 19 years old. I'm going to Chicago midwinter. I had never been on a plane until I had actually worked in his office. And we would go to Greater New York, Atlanta. We went as a team. And when the team learns as a team and comes back, they're much more on board with changing things, implementing things. And so as I stayed with him for numerous years until I had a family, and then I did a bit of a career change and started teaching, but he was the one that encouraged me to get involved in the Dental Assistants Association. So we had a little local affiliate, a little chapter, and I volunteered to be president and run that group. And so I did that for several years and would get guest speakers, and so I loved continuing ed as much as he did. He went on to be, he was president of the Hamilton Academy of Dentistry, and then he went on to be president, he's a past president of the ODA, and he's soon going to be, I think, president of the CIDE in the next year or so. So he always stayed on that educational journey, and that's what had a big impact on me. So after I moved from chairside, I wanted to learn front desk, I went to front desk, and he actually taught me to be a treatment coordinator and explain treatment to patients very thoroughly in layman's terms so that they would understand it. And that was long before there was even a title of a treatment coordinator. So I was a treatment coordinator 25 years ago or more before any office really had those. And then I had an interest in the office management side and the business side of the practice. And because he shared the numbers that sort of made a successful practice, that's some of the things that I'm just going to be, I'll quickly go through it because I know you've been here a long time. But you'll find that some of the things that I'll be talking about and the benchmarks for a successful dental practice are the same things that you heard Bill talking about and Paul mentioning and even Sarah. And so these numbers come from listening to accountants and doing the year ends in dental practices. And I've been in many different practices now, and I currently am a consultant. I manage a large practice in Burlington that I have for the last 7 years. I actually started off, he asked me to come in and tweak a few things 7 years ago, and I've never left. And so that practice, we've expanded 3 times. We just finished another big expansion. I've added an oral surgeon, a periodontist, and an endodontist into a general practice, and that's not always easy to do, to get them to come in, a couple of days a month. But it makes for a very profitable, busy practice because patients don't want to leave the practice. So when you can do everything in-house, the only thing that we don't do is traditional ortho, but we do Invisalign and everything else. It has all the latest technology, and that's what sort of patients are looking for today. So I also taught dental admin for 13 years when my kids were small, and I also taught dental software. So there's things that I'm just going to share with you that I've kind of learned over 30 to 40 years of being in all different capacities of a dental practice. So we're going to start off talking about the business side of dentistry and what you need to know. So I like to call this Dental Stats 101, know your numbers. And it is really important, as once you get into a practice or buy a practice or even associating, start to learn the business side of dentistry because you really do need to pay attention to it. It's difficult today with the costs not only of buying a practice and what they're charging kind of per chart, And as Bill said, it's very important to know that the charts that you're buying are actually active patients. So that's something that if you do get into a position where you're looking at a practice to purchase, make sure they allow you, because I know a lot of brokerage companies come in and they'll look at every sort of 10th chart in the filing cabinet to determine sort of, you know, how many are active, and but really you need to look at every chart, and I'm going to share with you a few ways to find your active patient count. But these are the benchmarks that really haven't changed much over many years, but this is essentially the breakdown of what it costs to run a practice today. So about 5% of your overall production should be going to the costs of renting the facility, and ideally some of the most successful dentists that I've worked with ultimately end up either buying the building or moving into a house, or so if you can actually own the building or the property that you're in down the road, that is a huge advantage rather than relying on rent going up and down or having to lease a space because they charge per square inch. Payroll is the biggest expense that you'll have, is your team members. And it's critically important to hire the right team members. Your team, I mean, if you walked in on Monday morning and your team didn't show up, it's really very little you can do without the good people that help you. One thing that when you get into a position of hiring employees, extremely important to follow up on references. Do your due diligence. Really interview them, ask the right questions, and my interview process has changed greatly over the last 20 to 30 years, and people are always stunned how long my interview process is. And I always follow up on references. Unfortunately, you know, there is a problem with embezzlement. It is huge at the moment, and it's not typically what people, you know, pay attention to. They trust their employees. You know, you need to have everyone logging into the computer under their own password, and there's a lot of dental software out there that's very easily manipulated. So you need to pay attention to that. You need to know what reports to run, to be taking a look at. Not that, you know, that anybody is going to be doing anything, but, you know I'm in Hamilton area in Ancaster, and I personally know 5 dentists that have been embezzled in a very short radius. And it's all different ways. Well, we won't get into that today, but it is something to be aware of. And really know your software better than your employees, and pay attention to it. So hiring the right people is really key, because those are the people that are going to help you build your practice. Because the relationships, for the most part, when people are coming in, you know, 2 or 3 times a year for recare, the relationship is with the person on the front desk, the person that calls them, the person that greets them, and their hygienist. And so if they don't need any work done in several years, then they don't see you that often. They see you for, you know, 5-7 minutes when you come in to do that recare exam. So the relationships they have with your team members is really critical. So hire the right people. Dental supplies should be around 5%, office supplies around 2%. A lot of other miscellaneous, phone, internet, all of those things make up about 10%. About 10% of your overall production should be going to lab work. And marketing used to be about 1% of your overall cost, or that's typically what dentists used to spend. And that's because 20 years ago, a dentist could just put their name on a shingle and hang it outside, and the patient showed up. That doesn't happen anymore. And I know, some have talked previously today about marketing, and that if you're really running a really good practice and engaging your patients and explaining treatment, that you don't need to spend as much on marketing. But with the competition, it's just a reality that marketing is something that you need to get yourself to, stand out from the rest. And the one thing I like about the Burlington practice is we try all kinds of things in marketing the practice, and then we just eliminate the things that didn't work. But for the most part, we spend a lot of money on marketing. And it's paid off. It's a very successful practice that just has continued to grow, whereas other practices are declining. So that means your overall total of your expenses is anywhere from 60 to 70%. So for every $100 that you do in dentistry, $70 is going to just pay for everything. So that doesn't leave a lot left over. Now, as you practice for numerous years, that number does start to go down, and older dentists are, usually at a rate of about 50% in overall profitability. So it is something that you need to pay attention to and be checking your production numbers and also your overall costs. So when they talked about having a really good accountant, a really good lawyer, all of those things are really important, and your accountant should be somebody that does specialize in dentistry. I highly recommend it's someone that really knows how a dental practice operates, what your bottom lines are, and they can be a great advocate for you. So what's the biggest loss per day in any dental practice? Openings in the schedule. People do not pay enough attention to openings in the schedule. So we're just going to do a little bit of math about what an opening in your schedule means in terms of profitability. So why do patients cancel? And we really do train people how to treat us. Because if you make a specialist appointment or a doctor's appointment, do they give you a reminder call about your appointment coming up? You might have a specialist appointment in 8 months. Do you get a call to come in? Most of the time, no. So they know that you want that appointment, or if you go to the doctors, they don't call and remind you, and they don't call you if you don't show up. But in dentistry, we've taught them to expect that reminder call. But what's important about the reminder call too is we have to use technology and meet the patient where they want to be confirmed. So many offices are still calling a landline, and a lot of people have given up their landline. Or sometimes it still rings and they don't even have that landline hooked up. Or you leave a message on the landline and they pick messages up on that phone every 3 or 4 days. There's lots of great companies out there that do email confirmations and two-way text messages. And so you've got to find out, how does the patient want to be confirmed? There's still those often older patients that still want a phone call and still want to hear from their favorite person, like Harriet in the office, to give them a phone call. And that's perfectly fine. But find out how they want confirmations, because openings in the schedule is a huge cost to the practice. So people will often say, oh, something came up and I can't make it. Or I forgot and I didn't get my reminder call. Or nothing hurts, so I'll call when it does. Or I'm just too busy, there's a meeting at work, I didn't know about it, I can't come. The big one is my insurance company says I can only come once a year. Because maybe the hygienist made the appointment or the front desk administrator made the appointment when they were last in, and that's certainly what I recommend. 85% of your patients should be booking on the way out. And that's because it's a complete waste of time to be calling someone, to be calling, or paying someone hourly, to be calling to get people to come in. So you need to book them on the way out. And so the recall is really, or the recare visit, is the most canceled or failed appointment in dentistry today. And so why do they cancel it? They view it as just a cleaning. They'll call up and say, oh, it's just a cleaning. I got something else came up. And so they'll cancel that appointment. And we're the ones that taught them to devalue that appointment. Because the first thing that I would like everyone here when you first get into an office is eliminate the word cleaning from your vocabulary. Because people don't value anything that's just a cleaning or anything that has just a before it. We clean our house, we clean our cars, we don't clean people's teeth. So you need to teach them the verbiage to use. So you need to say it's active therapy, perio maintenance, professional scaling. Whatever your team decides to call it, don't call it a cleaning because they don't value that. So one of the things that I think is really important is happens in the last 5 minutes of any appointment, whether it's a hygiene appointment or whether it is the dentist. And that's kind of the 5-minute wrap-up of what went on today. Lots of times I see, hygienists or even dentists talking to the patient, or, maybe about their mouth or whatever while they're working. And the patient isn't really paying attention, whether it's nervousness or whatever is going on. The last 5 minutes is your opportunity to really sit them up. Don't take the bib off, because as soon as you take that bib off, they want to get out of the chair. They start sliding out before the chair is even upright. So leave the bib on. Look at them eye to eye. You're sitting and they're sitting. You've got them. You're at eye level, and you say, something like, Mrs. Smith, here's the most important question that everyone needs to ask their patients. So you're sitting them up and you say, there's just a couple things I'm concerned about, and I would like to go over what I'm seeing. Mrs. Smith, is it your goal to keep your teeth for a lifetime? You need to know that. Because if they're glazed over and you're talking about, whatever it might be, a grandiose treatment plan, whatever it might be, if you don't know the answer to that question, then you don't know that whether or not they're going to be concerned and want to do whatever is necessary to keep their teeth. If their parents both, lost their teeth at a younger age, then they might think they're destined for that. Just like Sarah talked about, people think their family history is what's going to be for them. So you need to understand whether or not they want to keep their teeth for a lifetime. Then you can go into, that's great. I'm really glad that we see things the same way. There's no reason today that you need to have teeth removed. So I want to talk to you about some of the areas that I'm concerned about, and then you go in and tell them and make thorough notes. So handing off the patient is the second area that's really critically important. I see some offices that just give them the chart and let them go out to the desk by themselves, and so the hygienist might have just finished saying, take your chart out to Nancy and she'll book your next appointment, and I'd like to see you back in 3 months. So by the time they go from the operatory out to the front desk, they've pretty much got dental amnesia. So they get out there and then they say to Nancy, well, I know Judy told me to come back in 3 months, but my insurance only lets me come once a year. So just book me in 9. That happens all the time. And it's because Judy has not done her job as to what Sarah was talking about, and Paul and everyone else, about really engaging the patient and having them understand their oral health and where they're headed and why they need to come back in 3 or 4 months. So you're failing the patient. So either the dentist should go out with them to the desk, or the hygienist or somebody, or even the assistant. Anybody can hand them off, but it's like handing a baton in a relay race. You want to hand them off to the front desk, reinforce why they need to come back, and again, look them straight in the eyes and say, Nancy, I would really like to see Mrs. Smith back in 4 months. I'm really concerned about an area on the lower left, and I want to make sure it's healing nicely. So you're giving them a reason to come back, and they're much more apt to do that. Also, comfort calls is really important. Or you can say something like, I don't anticipate any discomfort, Mrs. Smith, from the scaling that I did today, but if you are at all uncomfortable, then, just give me a call anytime, or, give Harriet a call, or whomever. You can also say something like, Nancy will give you a receipt today, and then they know that they're paying on the way out. There's been a bit of a shift in terms of fee-for-service, because fee-for-service is ideally what everyone would want, and what Bill was talking about writing off the copay, that is a big problem today, because with competition, and it is illegal, but you can't really say to the patient that's illegal, but you will get patients calling and saying, do you I've had people say, do you submit directly to my insurance company? And we say yes. And then they say, do you eat the difference? So what they're referring to is, do you write off the copay? So that's really important. That yes.
I had the lady asking for a cashback, not just a promo.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
So that's the thing which might happen nowadays.
Yeah. It's unbelievable what people will ask for. Yeah. So you want to, let them know that, if you're a fee-for-service office, you certainly want to let them know what you've submitted to the insurance company, what the insurance company is going to reimburse them for today, and how would you like to take care of that? Visa, MasterCard, debit, and they know that they're paying on the way out. So let's take a look at the numbers. Just what is a cancellation costing any practice today? So in most dental practices, a typical recare, and this is certainly on the low side, it just makes the math easy, but about $150 an hour for an average hygiene visit. And usually it's over $200 if they're having x-rays and an examination as well. So if you just have one opening in one hygienist column, and let's say you have 2 or 3 hygienists, but for now we'll just do one hygienist, you've got one opening in one hygiene column per day. So that's a loss of $150, that if that appointment isn't filled, then that money is lost forever. So if it's just one appointment per week, and that's not a big stretch for a lot of practices today. And so if you have one opening, it's $750 a week, which the average office is open 200 days a year. And that's an office that's operating, 4 days per week. Sometimes they're closed on Fridays, but most new offices now are open sometimes 6 and 7 days a week. And so 200 days per year, then that's $30,000, and that's just one opening in one hygienist column.
Well,
so yes.
You also add, if you're paying your hygienist for the hour,
yes,
you can add that on top.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you're paying. Because some dentists will say, if you don't have a patient, I'm not paying, or you can take a longer lunch, or you can do this or do but clock out. But if you have a really good hygienist, they don't normally accept that, and so you're paying them not only their salary, but the bigger cost is, where does the dentist treatment come from? It comes from hygiene. So if you've got multiple openings per week in the hygiene column, that starts to reflect itself, because dentists typically, even a new dentist is usually billing out, $350 to $450 an hour. An established dentist is billing out much more than that. So that's a loss of $350 if the dentist wasn't able to see that patient and find any work that needs to be done. So it just snowballs. And so all of the profit can be gone for the day if you're looking at that, 60 to 70% in overall costs, with just a couple openings. So the day is basically a wash. And so that's why you need to really pay attention to openings in the schedule and get that under control. So how to fill an opening? Let's say you have a 2-hour cancellation for Wednesday next week that just happened. I think it's really important to have in your morning huddles, you have the front desk administrators. Inform the team that there's now a 2-hour opening on Wednesday in the doctor's schedule, and it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a difficult time to fill, unless it's a senior or somebody that's maybe retired. So I need the team's help in filling that opening. So you can actually steer the patients into openings. So let's say, the dentist comes in and finds that, Mrs. Smith needs a filling or a root canal or whatever it might be. And so they don't know that there's an opening in the schedule. So they can go out to the desk with Mrs. Smith and say to Nancy, I'm really concerned about that tooth. I don't want it to flare up and be a problem. I would like to get Mrs. Smith in as soon as possible. Harriet, even if you have to move somebody, please accommodate her as quickly as you can. So now the patient's, woo! So I need to get back in, I need to get this done. So you can absolutely steer, but you should know where there's openings and holes in your week so that everybody can work together to try and help fill it. Because it shouldn't just be one person's responsibility. You also need to create a priority list with every single patient as you exit them. So I'm really, I've just seen it happen so many times that I do not believe that once an appointment is booked, it should ever be moved. I consider when I give that patient that appointment card that it is a confirmed appointment. It's not tentative. That's confirmed, but patients think, because we've taught them, because if you don't hear from me and get that confirmation call, that's essentially a tentative appointment. My overall philosophy, and I've heard this from many consultants and many speakers over the years, is you move them, they'll move on you. And so if you start, and what a lot of administrators I've seen do over the years is they will use future booked appointments and move them ahead. If there's an appointment next Tuesday, and I've got an opening this Tuesday, they'll take that appointment and go, oh, it's Tuesday, it's at the same time, 2 o'clock? Good, I'll call this person. She's a really good patient, she'll come in. And chances are she might. But what they're thinking and what you've taught them to do is, well, she moved me, something else came up, I'm gonna cancel my appointment. So we teach them how to treat us. So it's really important. I think that a patient should, once that appointment is booked, they chose the time and the day that was good for them. And then if we move it, even if you're moving it up and down in the day, it's often they will mess that up because they're rushing to the dental appointment, they look at their card, but you called them and moved it up 20 minutes or 40 minutes because that worked better with your schedule that day. they often will look at their card just as they're leaving and go, "Ooh," you know, and they get there and they show up and they either didn't get the message or they messed up the time because they forgot that you moved it. So I really feel once that appointment is booked, unless your provider has been hit by a bus in the morning, you don't call them to move it or cancel it. So it's really important to not teach patients that it's okay to cancel last minute, because you can't verify if the patient calls in and says, "Oh, I'm really sick." How can you argue that? What you can do though is have a whole bunch of cards pre-signed by the team that are get well cards. And so if they're just using that as an excuse, you can pop a card in the mail that says, "Oh, we really hope you're feeling better. You know, we look forward to seeing you," and such and such, and the team's all signed it. And so chances are they won't keep using that excuse if you send them a get well card. You also need to be recording the reason that people cancel or change an appointment or no-show. That's important as well. I often get asked whether or not you should charge for a no-show appointment. A lot of times on the back of people's appointment card, it says 24 or 48 hours notice is needed to avoid a fee being charged. I think a fee being charged is a lose-lose scenario, because you could end up losing an entire family. And what are you going to charge them? The full value of the appointment? $50? What's $50 do? You've already got a big loss for that loss of production. So I think charging them is not the way to go. I do think you need a 3 strike and out policy. So if somebody books a primetime appointment early in the morning, late in the day, and they no-show or cancel, you don't give them, after 3 times, they don't get prime time anymore. And so you can put them, say, "You know what, I can put you on my priority list, and when you know you can absolutely come in, why don't you give me a call on a Monday, and if you can come in that week, I'll do my best to accommodate you." Don't keep rebooking notorious cancelers. You'll never get ahead of it and you'll never win. And so you can. There's also letters and different things that you can send them out just to let them know what, in a very nice way, what that, them not showing for that appointment has actually, taken the ability to get someone in that really needed that time into the practice. So what are the 2 most important days in dentistry? Does anybody know? What are your 2 most important days?
Monday.
Good guess. Anybody else? Friday? That's what most people guess. And I would say your 2 most important days in dentistry are today and tomorrow. Today and tomorrow. If you worry about today and tomorrow, I know it is. But those are really the only 2 days your team needs to worry about. So if you look at today's schedule and something's happened, then everybody works together to get today back on track, and then you're always looking at tomorrow. If there's an opening a couple days from now, that's not as critical. So today and tomorrow, today and tomorrow. You take care of those 2 days, and everything else will take care of itself. The most important number, and this is something that Bill talked about, and I think even Sarah talked about. I asked her if she knew what the most important number is in dentistry, and she absolutely does. It's your active patient count, and that's really important when you're looking at buying a practice, because every dentist will inflate that number. And even when I ask a dentist, "Do you know what your true active patient count is?" they all say, "Oh yes, I've got 4,000 patients." Rarely have I ever come across somebody that actually knows what their true active patient count is. There's lots of ways to get this number. There's very basic ways that just give you a basic idea, but this is really important when you're at the point of looking for a practice, to really focus on that active patient count, because you get charged usually by the chart of how many active people there are, and anybody selling wants to inflate that number. So you may have openings in your schedule because you don't know your active patient number, because that's where the amount of hygiene hours you need comes from. So it's a very important number to know. An active patient is someone defined as anybody that's been in the practice in the last 2 years, once or twice. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be really regular patients, but anybody that's been in the last 24 months, once or twice, is active. So if you regularly purge your charts, which I think Bill was mentioning as well, that's really important to do, to be purging your charts all the time and making sure that the ones that are on your shelves are active, then you can simply, if you've got 8 shelves of charts, just most of them have pretty much the same amount on each shelf, just count one row and multiply it by 8. Bingo, you've got a pretty basic active patient count. The other thing, if you use stickers for every time that they come in for a recare visit, a lot of companies have like a 2015, 2016 sticker. So that's an easy visual way to see who has fallen through the cracks. And if there's stickers there that are 2013, 14, you need to pull those out and find them why they haven't been in. But you can simply count those stickers, and then that also will give you a pretty accurate account of your active patients. Dental software can also give you that number, but people think, like if you have AbleDent, and they think I just have to click on the number of active patients, and what AbleDent does, or many software does, is just counts the little check marks beside the name that are active people. Well, lots of times they're a benefit holder, or you know, the husband doesn't come into the practice, but the rest of the family does, but they're included in active patients because they're the insurance holder. So that is not very accurate. You have to get a custom scan done and have them do a scan of every time someone has come in the last 2 years, and the code 01202, which is the recall code, was billed in the last 24 months, but they have to separate out the people that have been in 2 or 3 times. So that is the other way to get a really true active patient count. So these are general numbers, which I think has also been mentioned by some of the other speakers. That now this is for a general practice, not a specialist practice. So 1 full-time hygienist is needed, and that's based on working 4 days a week for every 800 active patients, because you're usually seeing them at least twice in a year. 1 full-time dentist is needed for every 1,500 to 1,800 active patients. That will keep 1 dentist and 1 or 2 hygienists very busy if you have that amount of patients. But you need to be checking this all the time, because you need to be adding in your new patients in terms of finding out hygiene hours, your new patients coming into the practice. But what's really important, and a lot of offices miss, is the people exiting out the back door. Because you have to keep track of the people that are leaving the practice because they moved, or, you know, heaven forbid they died, or they're now in a nursing home or something and they're not coming in regularly. So your true new patient count is based on how many people left last month as well as how many people came in, and you subtract the two to get your new patient count. 85% of all your patients should be in some type of active therapy and should be booking on the way out. That's the best way to retain them and have them coming in on a regular basis. The hygiene department should be providing 30 to 40% of your overall production, because the hygiene department is the success engine in any practice. And so that's where all your treatment's coming from by doing recare. So it's really important to have a very productive full schedule and know how many hygiene hours you actually need. Because if you have a lot of openings, sometimes it's just because you've got too many hygienists and too many hours based on the number of patients you truly have. So that's an important number. So how do we create, oh, and I forgot my little, I've got a little article. And so how do we create, as Paul said, raving fans of our patients? And that's a lot of things that, you know, sort of everybody has said here today, that you want to have excellent customer service is the way to keep patients coming back, to be informing them, to engage with them, you know, talk to them, and really, as you know, as Sarah said about working with them for their overall wellness and oral health, and give them a reason to be coming into the practice. But great customer service, you want to have the wow experience for any patient, particularly today with competition being the way it is. You really need to have them coming in and just love coming in, and, you know, pay attention to reviews. You should be having reviews on your website. As Bill said, how important it is to have a good website. You also want to be, you know, doing surveys and polling your patients and finding out how they really feel. I know just in Sherwood Dental, the website people just sent me some reviews of Paul's practice, and it's amazing what the patients are saying. saying. And so you need to share that with your team members and let them know, and have it on your website and have it on social media so that people can see what other patients are saying about you. That's one of the best ways to get people calling your office. So I love this little story. It's from The Simple Truths of Service. And it talks about great service being a choice. And everyone has a choice. Every day when you walk into the dental office, I love a saying by Zig Ziglar, who's was a motivational, he died a couple years ago, but he was a motivational speaker. And I heard him about 20 years ago in Hamilton. And he always says, when you love what you do and you do what you love, every day is a vacation. And I've really felt that way since 1975 when I started in dentistry. I just absolutely loved it. I think it's a great profession. But you also got to work with great people and really, you know, just throw yourself into and embrace the dental practice and treat your patients well. So this little story is about great service is a choice. And it says, no one can make you serve customers well. That's because great service is a choice. Years ago, my friend Harvey McKay told me a wonderful story about a cab driver that proved this point. He was waiting in line for a ride at the airport, and when the cab pulled up, the first thing Harvey noticed was that the taxi was polished to a bright shine. Smartly dressed in a white shirt, black tie, and freshly pressed black slacks, the cab driver jumped out and rounded the car to open the back passenger door for Harvey. He handed my friend a laminated card. On the card it said, "I'm Wally, your cab driver. While I'm loading your bags into the trunk, I'd like you to read my mission statement." So his mission statement said, and Harvey was quite taken aback, and he looked at the card. It says, Wally's mission statement: to get my customers to their destination in the quickest, safest, and cheapest way possible in a friendly environment. This blew Harvey away, especially because he noticed that inside the cab, it matched the outside of the cab. It was spotlessly clean. As he slid behind the wheel, Wally said, "Would you like a cup of coffee? I have a thermos of coffee, one regular and one decaf." And so Harvey said jokingly, "No, I'd prefer a soft drink." And he said, "Well, no problem, I've got that too. I have a cooler up front, and I have regular and Diet Coke, water and orange juice." So almost stuttering, Harvey said, "I'll take a Diet Coke." So handing him his drink, Wally said, "If you'd like something to read, I have the Wall Street Journal, Time, Sports Illustrated, and USA Today." And as they were pulling away, Wally handed my friend another laminated card. "These are the stations I get, and the music they play if you'd like to listen to the radio." And if that wasn't enough, Wally told Harvey that he had the air conditioning on and asked if the temperature was comfortable for him. Then he advised Harvey of the best route to his destination for that time of day, and also let him know he'd be happy to chat and tell him about some of the sights, or if he preferred, just leave him to his own thoughts. "Tell me, Wally," this amazed friend said to the driver, "have you always served customers like this?" Wally smiled into the rearview mirror. "No, not always. In fact, it's only been in the last 2 years. My first 5 years of driving, I spent most of my time complaining like the rest of the cabbies do. Then I heard a personal growth guru, Wayne Dyer, and on the radio one day, and he had just written a book called You'll See It When You Believe It. Dyer said that if you get up in the morning expecting to have a bad day, you will rarely disappoint yourself. He said, stop complaining, differentiate yourself from your competition. Don't be a duck, be an eagle. Ducks quack and complain, and eagles soar above the crowd. Well, that hit me right between the eyes, said Wally. Dyer was talking to me. I was always quacking and complaining, so I decided to change my attitude and become an eagle. So he said, I looked around at the other cabs and their drivers. The cabs were dirty, the drivers were unfriendly, the customers were unhappy. So I decided to start making some changes, just a few at a time. So when my customers responded well, I did more. He said, I guess this has paid off for you. He said, it sure has. My first year as an eagle, I doubled my income from the previous year. This year, I'll probably quadruple it. You were lucky to get me today. I don't sit at cab stands anymore. My customers call me for appointments on my cell phone or leave a message on my answering machine. If I can't pick them up myself, I get a reliable cabbie friend to do it, and I take a piece of the action. Wally was phenomenal. He was running a limo service out of a yellow cab. He says, I probably told that story to more than 50 cab drivers over the years, and only 2 ever took the idea and ran with it. Whenever I go to their cities, I give them a call. The rest of the drivers quacked like ducks and told me all the reasons they couldn't do any of what I was suggesting. Wally, the cab driver, made a different choice. He decided to stop quacking like the ducks and start soaring like the eagles. How about you? Has anybody got any questions? I know you've been here for a long time. You've been very patient. But it really is all about customer service. So the most important thing you can do when you start in a practice is really engaging your patients, getting to know them, understanding their dental history, and really showing that you care. You know, that there's all kinds of sayings that people don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. So thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, if there's any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Roxanne.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I hope everyone found the day informative and helpful, and I hope that the effort and the vision that we have is worth your while, and we look forward to having you back for more events. We will keep continuing to have such informative sessions more often in the future, and I hope everyone has filled their feedback forms. This one looks empty. Okay, so we shall be in touch. Thank you for your time. Please let us know of your feedback if you haven't filled it, and many of you, some of you I'm regularly in touch with, so we'll keep talking, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.